Welcome back to another edition of the Balas and Skene Show. This is postmortem Indiana, and I am wearing my Lions gear today, and for good reason. 5 interceptions, Doug Skene from the great Jared Goff, the best quarterback in Michigan or in Lions history, according to Doug Skene, throws 5 picks, and Doug Skene tells me, "Well, only 3 were his fault." Meh, 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 meh. Come on, man. Come on. Be a man and
Well,
man up. I love Jared
listen.
Goff, but come on, man.
I stick by it. Of in my lifetime, Goff is the best quarterback the Lions have had, and I rate that from clutch performances. And yes, it wasn't pretty, it was ugly, but he was also part of the reason they won.
Yeah,
So
right.
hey, Ballas, I'm just saying,
Well,
it's
this
it's a statistical almost impossibility to turn the ball over 5 times and win an NFL football game. That's
100%.
crazy.
And if it were a
But
Michigan, and if it were a Michigan quarterback, you would be eviscerating him. But let's go talk about Michigan at this point, because you know what, you're going to eviscerate Davis Warren anyway, and maybe for good reason. But at the same time, here's
no,
one.
I'm not. I'm not gonna
Okay,
eviscerate him.
okay.
No.
Here's one stat though that just blows my mind: 61.8% of passing downs and dropbacks, he was under pressure on
Hmm.
Saturday. That is unacceptable. That's ridiculous. You can use whatever you want to describe it. It's insane. And I wrote in my post game, and you read this, and tell me if you agree with it, that the offensive line has been the biggest disappointment, the most disappointing part about this offense this year.
Yes, no doubt, and in no particular order. Inconsistent run blocking, going back to run linebackers running through against Oregon. Inconsistent pass blocking with simple passing off of basic tackle end tackle twists or linebacker down lineman gains. We're not talking about complicated stuff here, but guys out of position in pass protection, guys that are in help position that are of no help because they're out of position, or if they're in position, they don't really help. They just stand there and they just watch, right? They just kind of stand there. Maybe they'll put an arm out, but they don't really, in my definition of pass pro help, which means you don't have a blitz coming, you got nothing coming, you go light the shit out of somebody and make that defensive lineman think twice about coming. We don't do that. Our simple one-on-one pass sets. There was a play where we had a blitzer come off the edge, and the good news, Ballas, you can go back and watch the tape. You can see pre-snap we've got a slot guy tied to the box, and Link over there at right tackle. You can see the stripes on his helmet. He looks over and sees the threat, and you can see the right guard. I think it was Al Hadi. It might have been Gadice at the time. It doesn't matter. They both look over, and you can see they're communicating. Okay, great. We're going to adjust to pick this up, which they schematically, by rule, they did. But then Link takes a terrible pass set and doesn't get himself into position to adjust for that blitz from a wider angle. And the guy's in the backfield drilling the crap out of our quarterback or providing pressure. So my point is the basics. It's the basics, Ballas, here after 10 games. We still don't seem to have the basics down. And there's enough talent and there's enough experience in that offensive line group that we should be far better performing unit than what we are. I agree with you. That's
Yeah.
the biggest disappointment.
And it's really unbelievable at this point. You're 10 games in. And the hard part for me to rectify here is that offensive your former offensive coordinator is your head coach now and your offensive line coach. And this should be the strongest unit on the team if that's the case, in my opinion. And it was usually the case with Bo Schembechler, whose background was offensive line, right? And you know what? You look at these guys, and when you talk about basics and you talk about you could talk about talent, and there's enough talent on this team, on this line, for them to be better than they are. If you look at, and
Mhm.
I don't care about 4 stars and 3 stars. I'm talking about guys that I've seen do it before and pass block before and do things right before. So what's the disconnect here, Skeen? In
That's the
what?
great. Well,
Yeah.
this it's the great mystery, Ballas. And
Hmm.
here's what we don't know. We don't know a few things. We don't know exactly what they work on in their time that they're allowed to work on it. We don't know the connectivity in that locker room. There's a special sauce that you and I have talked about before in the past, how close those guys are together. When you're outside the building, are they talking about how we can work on things to get better? Does it bother them that they give up this kind of pressure on guys? I don't know. I don't know. All we can do is what we can see on Saturdays. And we've seen a little bit of improvement early in the year, and now it's just slowly gotten worse as the year has gone on. So you got so many hours of walkthrough time, you got so many hours of practice time, and then you got all the other hours amongst yourselves as players to work on things and talk about things. And it's the great unknown. And we're never going to know because we're not in the building, we're not in the locker room. So, whatever the reasons are for this team not performing and this unit not performing the way they should be, according to their talent and experience, they need to fix it. And that's a combination of Grant Newsom and the leaders in that room demanding better of each other. And here's the thing, the one thing that I keep waiting on that I still haven't seen, 10 games in, when is someone going to get pissed off and just have enough of this? How many times do you have to see your quarterback scrambling for his life or getting hit, knocked down, all these other things before you just get pissed off at the world and you want to take it out on someone else? And I still haven't seen it. So I guess 10 games in, we're probably not going to see it.
No.
And that's a detriment. That's a detriment to your quarterback who's got to play with these dudes up in front and the rest of your offensive unit, because it doesn't matter whether it's Sharon Moore or Bo Schembechler or anybody else. Every great football team that wins championships has an ass-kicking offensive line and an ass-kicking defensive line. And then obviously, the skills players, that goes without saying. But they all have great offensive linemen that absolutely dominate people when given the chance. And we're just not doing those things, Balas. And I can't answer why, but we're just not.
Is there one guy on this line that has a mean streak? And you always talk about this. We go back to Ben Bredesen. We go back to Taylor Lewan. We go back to Trevor Keegan and guys like that. And over the years, obviously your line, you guys, you got taught to do it, right? You came here as a nice guy with a goofy haircut, and with all due respect, I said that with all due
That's
respect.
true. That's a fact.
Okay. A nice kid from Texas that was kind of indoctrinated into this little fraternity started by Steve Everett, where you just kind of learn to hate the guy across from you just because. Okay.
Well,
Is there a single guy on this line that you can say this guy's got that?
That I've watched play this year? No.
Yeah, I didn't think
No,
so.
I have not seen that. And usually you have to have at least one. You got to have one crazy guy up there who's living on the edge of a 15-yard penalty, right up to it, but short of it on every play, and taking shots and trying to suck the soul out of the defensive guys in front of you in a way that causes them to just want to shut it down. It's a super aggressive way of playing and practicing and just the kind of way you carry yourself. I can't see one, Balas. And I keep waiting. And I've been, I watch very closely throughout the course of the season. And the indicators are how you finish your run blocks. Are you trying to get guys on the ground, on their back, and rub your belt buckle in your face like, you and I have talked about over the years? And in pass pro, when given a chance and you're free, do you take shots on dude and make them slow down? And there's ways within the rules to do that. It's clean, legit football. I'm not talking about anything dirty. I'm talking about within the rules, dominating people. I have not seen that this year. Can you coach it? Yes, you can. Can you talk about it? Yes, you can. Can you incentivize it? Yes, you can. We used to get helmet stickers. My helmet's sitting up here above my bookcase. We used to get helmet stickers for knockdowns and pancakes, and it was a point of competitive pride for us. And so many other lines, talking about John Jansen and that 97 team, that 97 line, just awesome dudes. There was a chart on the wall. We would debate for knockdowns and pancakes. We just wanted them so badly because then we could talk to each other about how we were crushing people. And then, of course, I've shared the story in the past. We used to see if we could get a guy to cry at the end, before the end of the game. Can we get one of these defensive linemen to cry in front of their teammates? And yes, that sounds brutal. And yes, that sounds mean.
Good.
But inside the white lines of a football field, it's legal, right?
Yeah. it's beautiful. Let's be honest here. This is a violent game. This is a violent game for violent people.
It
if
is.
You got a problem with that? You're in the wrong spot here.
And so Steve Everett was our leader, right? And we learned things from Steve because he was a guy. But boy, we used to take every team you play, there's a defensive box, right? You got defensive linemen and linebackers. We would always try to pick the best defensive lineman they had. If we could make that guy quit and maybe that guy get frustrated, 15-yard penalty, maybe even shed a tear because he's so frustrated because we're beating the crap out of him. If we could make that guy quit, we knew the rest of them would quit too. And we did that often, Balas. And then I could see that in other lines, the last couple of years lines with Keegan and others. And then, of course, the great lines that Michigan's had since we played many, many years ago. And specific linemen do the same thing. That's the mentality of how you play the position up there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have to do it exactly that way, but I haven't seen even elements of that out of this group. And that's just frustrating for me to watch because they're capable, Balas. They all have the size, speed, and talent and the God given gifts of a big, long, strong skeleton. And they have the strength. They train hard and they go out and they just play kind of soft.
Yeah. We've got a segment of the fan base that wants to blame the quarterback for everything. And this is kind of, it comes with the position, and I get it. And Davis Warren, and I've said this many times, that they should have gone to the portal. They needed a different quarterback, and there's not a quarterback on this team. I'm not saying none of them can't develop, but they haven't by now. Davis Warren hasn't played a ton of football, but I had one guy say to me, "You're an idiot. Davis Warren's always throwing off his back foot." And I'm like, why do you think that is? Number one, why do you think that Davis Warren is throwing? Tell them, Doug Skene, why Davis Warren is always throwing off his back foot.
Well,
Because half the time there's a guy in his face.
let me try to put this in normal person's terms.
Right.
If every morning you got up in the house is dark and you walk into the kitchen to start your cup of coffee or you get your Cheerios or make your eggs or whatever the heck you do in the morning, if every morning you walked around the corner and a dude was standing there you weren't expecting to stand there and smacked you right in the gut or hit you in the side of the head, after a while, when you get up in the morning, when you come around the corner, you might be a little jumpy. You
Mm-hmm.
might be a little nervous about where you're going to get hit next. And you're probably going to walk down the hallway of your house and into your kitchen with a little temptation to, be a little nervous and how else can I explain it,
Right.
Ballas?
Right.
Quarterbacks need to be able to sit in there and have confidence they're not going to get the shit drilled out of them every time they go back into pass sets into the pocket. And Davis has not had that luxury. And whose fault is that? Well, it's your pass protection. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excusing all of the quarterback performance on offensive line because it's not all. But
No.
there's a reason. There's a reason he wants to bail out of the pocket fast. There's a reason he wants to move around in there fast. There's a reason he doesn't have the greatest of mechanics, and part of that reason is the pass protection. Not
Yeah.
all of it, but part of it.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit. I want to get some credit here. I don't want this just to be a bitch fest, but it's our job here to talk about what we see and to be honest about things. And I'll be honest, this defense, the last two games in the second half, has come out with. They really didn't have a whole lot of. They couldn't have had a whole lot of faith in what the offense was going to do. Right? If you're watching that and you're like, "Holy shit, I got to go out there and bust my ass." And then come back out here again, probably in 3 plays or after a pick or something going on, that and do it all over again. These guys fought their ass off, and you had some young
Mhm.
guys that really stepped up too. Cam Brandt, TJ Guy played well. I want to give these guys some credit here for what they accomplished on Saturday. And Indiana, maybe not the world beater that a lot of people thought they were, but I'll say this: 10-0. I don't give a damn who you are. 10-0 is 10-0, and whoever
Mhm.
you played. Michigan's not Michigan. I don't think Indiana rushed the field on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. I
It's
think
hard to rush the field there, Ballas. I
yeah,
told you before
you're
the
right.
game. It's a
But
big wall.
it is a big wall. But um, and they were disappointed. I was listening to them walking towards the post game press conference. They were disappointed they didn't pull this team out, and I'm like, wow, what a difference a year makes. But that defense stood up tall, and I really thought played its ass off
Well, so the
in the
things that we've
second.
been complaining about with grit and toughness and aggression, those are the things that we did see from the Michigan defense in the
Mm-hmm.
second half. You saw some dudes lighting guys up, a couple of questionable. Oh, is this targeting? And by the way, the television guys now actively seeking targeting calls
Yeah,
with their production of slow mo replays immediately after games to try
yeah,
to get a targeting review. I'm done with that. And I'm not just done with that with Michigan games. I'm done with that in college football. Every time I watch a game, it's like the television guy is trying to trigger targeting calls. But that's a side complaint of mine.
yeah.
Uh, the Michigan defense picked up the pace, picked up the aggression, trying harder. playing harder, celebrating big plays together. There were flashes of like, wow, look at these guys playing their asses off in spite of the other side of the team not doing much with the football to help them. They certainly hung in there, Balas. There's a lot of credit to those guys because you're a 5-5 football team. You're staring down the barrel of maybe 6-6, and yet Martindale and this defensive coaching staff got these guys playing hard. So hats off to them. Helmet
Yep.
stickers for them. Whatever helmet stickers the offensive guys are supposed to get, give them all to the defense because they're the ones that are worthy of it right now.
Two things. The helmet sticker thing I forgot to mention earlier. Did they had guys with like a helmet full of helmet stickers in game 2,
I
right?
know.
I don't, and I'm thinking, what do you know, did you bring some guy his coffee this morning and you got a helmet sticker?
I don't.
Did you share some orange juice or a Flintstones vitamin with your
Yeah, I think
teammate here?
I think the qualifications may have changed over the years. That's fine. I don't even care. You
It's
get the
not
intent,
fine.
right?
It's not. Tell them it's not fine. It's not okay.
Everybody, okay, it's
Everybody
not
wants
fine.
angry. Everybody wants angry Skene. Tell them that's not okay. A soft society. Come on, say it.
Oh,
Yeah.
everybody gets a trophy. Hey, you got out of bed today. Hey, you showed up for practice. Here's a helmet sticker. I don't know, guys.
There we go. That's what I was waiting to see. And then number 2, uh, our targeting opinion brought to you by a guy who still has all of his faculties and isn't a drooling vegetable because of the sport here.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
yeah. So, how many concussions did you suffer here in your
I don't
years?
know the number. At Michigan, at least, well, probably at least 2 that I can remember where things went dark and you see stars.
Yeah.
Obviously back during a different era, and we didn't know what we know now. But that's yeah, we can characterize the toughness and everything else and compare the eras. I mean, when we were at Michigan, the guys that came before us would laugh at us for being soft and
Yeah.
whatever. We can debate that forever, and that will be debated forever.
Yeah.
What can be debated and debated more effectively is the grit that the Michigan defense showed versus the grit that the Michigan offense is not showing. And you can see it on TV. You can hear it. Coaches talk about hearing football. You can see and hear things out there out of that Michigan defense that the Michigan offense is capable of, but is not doing it. Whose fault is that? All the dudes on the field and their offensive coaching staff. So please, somehow, please, in these last 2 games, can we demonstrate the effort and desire of worthiness of that uniform that the defensive guys are showing and do it on the offensive side of the football field? It'd be great to see, because if you don't, there's a group of dudes down in Columbus, Ohio, that are going to run it up and rub your nose in it badly if we don't find a way to play with some grit.
Yeah, and I'd say after 10 games, you kind of are what you are, and
Yeah.
that's the concern that I have. So it's weird the way they're the running backs. You get Kalel Mullings not in there until the second half, and I think they wanted to get Benjamin Hall some run, which is fair, right? And overall, though, there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to a lot of what they do, and I had somebody. I had somebody come up to me in the press box and say, it's if you look at this, this team that this Indiana team is really up there in sacks and up there in this and up there in that, and they haven't sacked our quarterback. I'm like, yeah, he's running for his life. He's doing a great job running for his life, is what I'm thinking of, and escaping some pressure. But he easily could have been sacked a handful of times, and the standards. I understand when you lose a lot of talent, and they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the basics that really bother me, and that's what I have a problem with here. That you've got, like you said, and I always watch for the end tackle twists, and I always say, okay, is this a result of a guy getting beat one on one? And a lot of times it was. And Sharon Moore said that inside there's a kid, Kamara for Indiana, who was an absolute wrecking machine. But a lot of the times too, right? It was just again just the basics. And I really,
Seven. I think there was seven dudes from James Madison
yeah,
absolutely shredding the Michigan offensive line.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's a fact. Specifically in the technique, and you watch the tackle end tackle twists, and I've talked to you about this before and shown you, when you see an offensive lineman whose hips and shoulders are out of relation, right? You got one guy high, one guy low, and or one of those guys has their shoulders turned to the sideline. If you turn your shoulders to the sideline and the guy loops around this way to your inside, you have no chance of blocking them. You're just not going to do it unless you're some absolute NFL Hall of Fame athletic freak, and there's not a lot of those guys in the world. It's just basic technique. And the way you assure that you can pass off twisting games in front of you, whether they're linebacker, D line, or just purely D line, the only way you assure this is to make sure that your position with your line mates and your shoulder position and your hands being out and your head being back, you can see things. You see flashes of color coming at you. You know, if I'm playing right guard and a dude takes a wide angle and is going right at my tackle really hard, well, you know what? I should probably expect someone to loop back around. If it's an old rule in the offensive line, Balas. If something goes away from you, something's going to come toward you. It's a rule of football. So you have to be prepared for that. And the way you prepare for that is taking the proper sets. Pass set with your line mates so that there's a nice arc, there's a nice bow of hips and shoulders. And then if you're passing things off and you can see things, it doesn't matter what they do. You got a hat for a hat, you pass it off. We're just not very good at that because we got guys out of position. Oftentimes you play a four-man front. Oftentimes one of your guards is uncovered because you got a 3 technique and a 0 shade, someone over the center or inside gap, and then you 3 technique on the outside of eye of one of your guards, and then two defensive ends, a 4-man front. One of your guards is usually uncovered, and it's pass protection. Time and time again, our uncovered guard is in what I call no man's land. Mm-hmm. He's way ahead of the rest of his line mates. He's not in a position to do anything but watch football. We used to get laughed at, and Coach Miles and Coach Hanlon would say, "You owe me money. You owe this team. You owe this team and this university money because you're sitting around watching football. You're no different than the dude in the stands. You're not doing anything but watching, and you got a really good seat to see it, but you're watching. You're of no use to anyone. You're in no man's land." Because you're out there away from anybody. And then here's the telltale sign when you're watching this stuff on television and whether you're watching it in person like you do. Whenever you see a lineman turning around all the way to look behind him to see what's going on in protection, that dude is way out of position. It just is.
Yep.
All the time. If you have to turn around to see the opposite colors of dudes in the opposite color uniform, if you have to turn around to see it, you're in no man's land, and you owe the team football, the football team, money for watching the game. You're of no use there.
And we've seen this.
I see it too often, way too often.
Yeah, and this is different than the last 3 years. So clearly, these guys have a lot of work to do. So
Balas, this is different than the last 3 years, hands down. When Sharon had this offensive line unit, we didn't see that very often. They were pretty doggone good. Here's the scary part for me in watching this week after week after week. This reminds me of the dark years of the last 15 years that you and I have watched these games, and you and I have broken down the offensive line play, and I've pointed things out, and it's like, why are we doing this? Yep. Why are we doing that? This doesn't make any sense. This guy's in no man's land. We haven't had these conversations in 4 or 5 years. But we did have them for 10 straight years, and I don't want to go back to that. I do not want to go back to that, but I feel like we kind of are.
I know. And next year's going to be a big year. And I wrote this already. I said there are no patience. There's no patience in football anymore. There are no 3-4 year, I need to build my program type of years anymore, right? You look what Indiana did in 1 year. They went from 3-9 to 10-0 with a bunch of James Madison transfers and a used car salesman as a coach who turns out to be a damn good used car salesman. And he's a good coach. I can make fun of him all I want to, but this guy's a very good football coach.
But you and I like to make fun of some coaches sometimes, but we always say he's a good coach.
Right. Row the boat guy.
Row the boat guy. Yeah.
Is he a good coach? Sometimes
I think he's shown that he's good.
Okay.
And maybe not having a great year this year or a good year by his standards, but row the boat guy. He's demonstrated he's an effective football coach. And Skene at Indiana, clearly we can giggle at what he says outside the lines and out into the media and how his mannerisms are. We can all giggle at that. His football team is undefeated, and we're 500.
I prefer the word laugh to giggle, but you do you. That's fine. Whatever you guys, however, James Franklin. Let me ask you about James Franklin. Good coach. Bad big game.
Good, good,
Bad big game
good,
coach.
good. No, one of the worst game day coaches in all of college football.
Yeah.
Big game coach. One of the worst in college football. Good, not great.
Yep.
Do we want to be Penn State where we're happy at 10-2,
No.
9-3, losing all the big games? No.
No.
No, we've ran coaches off out of here before. Lloyd at the end of Lloyd's run, he was 8-3,
Yep.
8-4, 9-3, 10-2, and we just were tired of it, right? We just
Yep.
the standard, and Sharon's talked about this. This is not a debate. The standard of Michigan football is winning championships.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. And speaking of that, finally, game day decisions, letting 30 seconds run off the clock when you have three timeouts at the end of the game. I'm sure. Were you still tuning in on that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then also the review when it was very clear that Alex Orji's knee was not down before he fumbled the ball.
So this is the part, and maybe you can ask. Now this game's over with, but in the future, when you see this kind of thing, Balas, you can ask. I would love to know what was said on the headset between whoever's spotting that up in the press box. What was said? Are they saying, yeah, challenge that? We think a knee is down.
He said they buzzed. He said somebody buzzed down and said that. So
well, okay, then whoever saw that, I don't know who it was, but gosh, it wasn't close. It wasn't anything. And of course, the TV guys are, "Ooh, is this targeting? Target?" No, no, it's called football. It wasn't targeting, and his knee wasn't down either. So I that's another one. It's like, what in the world is going on here? That we just wasted a timeout doing this, and it's just not even close. So yeah, the sideline head coach decisions. These are fair questions for a team that's not very good, and quite honestly, along those lines of sideline problems. I know your team is 500. You're not very good, but the body language is just, for me, when I watch Coach Moore on television, the body language is like, shit. We got big problems here, right?
Yep.
And I think obviously he's trying to figure it out, and will do the best he can to figure it out. But right now, we're in a tailspin here, Balas.
Yeah.
And I look at Coach Moore and I see a guy who has no answers on offense.
I agree. Yep.
And
here's the thing.
There's no answers.
And here's the thing. People say, well, why doesn't he take over the play calling? And I'm thinking, don't you think he's involved heavily as a three-time offensive coordinator on this football team? That don't you think he's got his hands all over this, and that he's talking specifically during the week, helping formulate a plan and talking to him on the headset and saying, what do we got? What's going to work? Jim Harbaugh did the same thing. Of course he is. So let's not blame one guy. You can talk about Kirk Campbell all you want to. When you got an offensive line that can't block, you got receivers that can't catch, you got a quarterback who shouldn't be starting quarterback at Michigan, with all due respect, then your hands are kind of tied. I'm not saying he's a great coordinator by any stretch, but to say that he is the one and only problem here and getting a new coordinator in here and it's going to fix everything just isn't accurate. We're talking position coaches. We're talking about everything else too. So
yeah, it's the offensive staff, Balas, the offensive staff collectively.
Yep.
I'm sure they're trying everything they can. Whatever the bottom line is, they don't have the answers.
No, they don't.
The little twists and stuff, the variations. The one thing I did notice in our first possession, we got away from our tendencies and throwing the football on first and second down more than we did before. Our first down efficiency in the game was much better than it was against Oregon. So they clearly changed some things up. But then we just revert back to some things that they've tried throughout the season that have a low percentage success rate. And everybody in the stadium knows what's about to happen. And we just don't have answers. And then you see, Sharon is just kind of staring out there into space. It's like, I kind of feel bad for the guy. But you know what, dude, it's your job to fix it. You need to get this fixed sooner than later, because this season's a wash. This season will go down as one of the worst in Michigan football history because, again, the standard is very, very high. He has said so publicly. I agree. We all agree. What are you going to do in these last two games to change some things? Because if you roll out there doing the same thing over and over again, then that means that maybe next year there's not going to be any significant changes either, which scares me.
Yep. The only redeeming thing that they can do to redeem this season right now is to go down to Columbus. And even then, you go down there, maybe if you win that football game, which they're a better there's a better chance of me winning the lottery twice, in my opinion, in 2 weeks consecutively, than that. But hey, you do that, you know what? Then you've beaten Michigan State and Ohio State. I don't, whatever. The Michigan State thing was just relief. It's not, wow, you can't hang your hat on that. Well, you beat a rival. Well, they suck. So sorry.
Well,
But
let's not minimize. We did beat Michigan State. You don't ever want to lose to those guys, and we beat
no,
them. And I would take a victory in Columbus. I would absolutely
100%.
beat.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's of course. That's what I'm saying. That's all you got to. So we'll see. They better beat Northwestern. I'll say that. Otherwise, then the heat gets cranked up to
Oh
the
boy,
roof.
if we
Yeah.
don't know how to beat Northwestern, Balas,
Yep.
then whatever dial the heat the thermometer's on
Yep.
gets doubled
Yep. 100%.
with a loss to those guys, and then we'll see what happens down there in Columbus. You fight hard, you show some grit, you keep it close. There'll be
No.
some
No.
moral. There'll be some
No.
moral
No. No.
victory fights. I
No.
won't be one of them. No, I won't
No.
be one of them.
Nope.
But maybe there's some indicators. You go down there and you get bombed. Then that thermometer just stays high
Yeah.
all off season, no matter what you do in your cute little bowl game, whatever we end up playing in, which is nothing but a glorified spring football in the fall, which this team clearly needs. So
Yeah.
it's important. It's important that we get to a bowl game, Ballas. That's
Yeah.
going to be important.
And it'll be the young guys that are playing in that game
Yeah.
because I'm sure all the veterans will sit. So as they
Yeah.
probably should. So he's Doug Skene. Skene, I appreciate your time as always. Best $10,000 you've ever earned for an hour, half hour's work. So spend it wisely. We'll get together soon, but I appreciate you. The golf club's still in the trunk.
No, this golf
Over.
season has pretty much officially ended. I'm reevaluating all my golf goals for
Okay.
2025, looking
All right.
back on the year. We had some highlights that you and me and Simonson were texting about. It's definitely
Yeah.
some highlights there. By the way, for everybody watching this podcast, Chris Balas with the 2024 putt of the year. For those that didn't
It's
hear
true.
about this,
It's true.
number 9 at Tullymore, off the green, downhill, big sloping left to right, nearly impossible. If you don't hit the cup dead center, it goes past the cup 15 feet. And you just dribbled it down there and it dropped to prevent a victory by Borton and Simonson, which was the funniest and greatest thing I've seen all summer.
The meltdown was epic, and I want you to talk about that on his show the next time you're on there too, because that was the most epic reaction I've ever had to having a match, and I think we got 3.5 out of 4 points if I'm not mistaken, because of that. So, but
It
Doug
was
Skene.
awesome.
But Doug Skene, I will be honest that Doug Skene carried us most of the rest of the way, except for maybe the last 2 holes. So you had a pretty damn good summer yourself. So looking forward to
Yeah.
doing it again. That Tullymore Summit in May is always one of the fun things to look forward to. That'll be one of the 3 times I golf all year. So I can't wait. So
Dude, you got to play more, Ballas. You're pretty good. You just got to play
no,
more.
I'm not pretty good. Let's be honest. But I have a chance to be decent if I would just play. But who's got time for that? We don't all get that NFL settlement money. So
Yeah,
he's
here
Doug
we go.
Skene. Exactly. He's Doug Skene, folks. Thanks again, Skene. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Go blue.